Today we're going to be talking about a lens that I have a love-hate relationship with. In this video, I want to talk about the one lens that enabled me to start my photography business and why it might just be that one lens you should invest in if you also want to start your business. If you could only buy one lens, if you have limited resources, this would be the lens I would recommend, especially if you shoot portraits and you want to shoot events. Even though it made such a huge impact in my life, I probably only made one dedicated video for this lens. It just feels like one of those lenses that are essential but a little boring to talk about. But after trying a few different lens combinations for my shoots, I always end up coming back to this lens. I feel like that's something worth sharing. I'm speaking from the perspective of a Canon full-frame camera user, so if you are on a different camera system, your lens choices might be very different from mine, but a lot of the ideas will still apply. I'll be mostly sharing from my personal experience, so I won't go into a lot of technical details. So this lens is the lens I want to talk about today, the RF24-70 f2.8. Let's go into why I love this lens first. I purchased this lens back in December 2021 because I heard it's probably one of the first lenses you should invest in if you want to take photography seriously. This lens is my most used lens every year. I bring it with me on every trip and I rely heavily on it for my paid photo shoots. I love the versatile focal length of this lens. It allowed me to get started in event photography, which turns out to be one of my favorite kinds of shoots. On one end, the 24mm is wide enough for me to capture group pictures or capture the scene. On the other end, the 70mm is extremely helpful in capturing speakers speaking on stage. It's also great for portraits. The range on this lens is extremely helpful as an event photographer. Events usually move super quickly and there's really no time to switch out your lens, especially if you're covering the event by yourself. There just won't be enough time for you to switch out the camera, especially if there's like an event schedule where there's something happening in every 30 minutes or every hour. You really don't want to miss any precious moments when you're switching out your lens. In an ideal world, I will have two cameras. I will have the 24-70mm f2.8 on one, and then I will have the 70-200mm on the other. I've actually rented cameras and lenses so I could try different combinations. What I learned was that I still shot most pictures with the 24-70mm, and the 70-200 was mostly a good to have, especially if your event is indoor. The 70-200 is pretty good for outdoor events. You need a lot more room if you want to shoot primarily with the 70-200. The 24-70 is definitely a safer bet. I recently tried shooting a family portrait with an 85mm because I heard many portrait photographers love this focal length. It was an 85 f2, and let me tell you, I definitely underestimated how much space I need for a full body shot. So I swapped back to the 24-70 very quickly. The f2.8 wide aperture is definitely a must and worth the price tag. I shoot events both indoors and outdoors, and since I don't always work with a flash and sometimes find it kind of disruptive, it is a lifesaver to have a wide aperture. In another ideal world, I would want it to be even wider, like an f2, but it's going to cost so much more and it's going to be bigger and even heavier. In the very few years that I've been shooting events, I learned that I actually don't keep my aperture at f2.8 all the time. I often needed to use a higher f-stop anyway since I had to make sure people's faces are in focus in group photos. And with such good technology nowadays, we do not need to fear the ISO. I've never had any issues with the focusing. It's super fast. I do also want to add that the Canon R6, which is the main camera I shoot with, is 21 megapixels. It really saves my life when I need to crop in to remove distractions or to fix my framing. If I continue to level up, I probably won't have to do a lot of that in post-production. So if this lens is so good and helped me so much, why do I hate it? The only downside to this lens is just how heavy it is. I have to bring this up every time I talk about this lens. Isn't this the reasons why people switch from Canon to Sony? The lens itself weighs 2 pounds and the Canon R6 is 1.5 pounds. So for events or my travels, I would be carrying around this amount of weight, walking around for 3 to 4 hours. But look, if we want to level up and use what the pros like to use, the RF 28mm to 70mm f2 lens, we gotta make sure we can handle this first. That lens weighs 3.15 pounds, which is more than 1 kilogram. I've never seen it in person, so I don't really know how much bigger it is than the 24 to 70 f2.8, but the thread size for this lens is 82mm, and for that one is 95mm. So I really shouldn't complain. And please, I don't need another person to tell me to switch to Sony. I love looking super professional, walking around with a giant lens and getting my workout in while carrying it around for hours. I chose this life for now. In conclusion, I love the versatile focal lengths, I love the fast focusing, I love the color, and with an f2.8 and a full frame camera, I really think it's enough for you to get started in your photography business. It's just crazy heavy. I always feel like I want to switch to the Sony camera system after bringing this lens with me on travels. The conclusion is I still can't live without the 24 to 70mm f2.8 lens. Honestly, by the end of the trip, I was really doubting this Canon life. It's just so heavy to carrying around for an entire day on your shoulder. Maybe a separate kit for traveling? So that's it. That's all I wanted to share with you regarding the RF 24 to 70mm f2.8 lens and my experience starting my photography business with this one lens. I always feel confident going into shoots if I have this lens with me. Along with the Canon R6, this dual is definitely my first choice of weapon going into any shoots. Let me know in the comments below which lens is your go-to. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye! I'm cooked. It's a wrap.